The heat hits you before the doors fully open. Not aggressive heat. Not the kind that stops you in your tracks. Just present, the way a living thing is present. Filling the space around you with a warmth that doesn't ask permission and doesn't apologize. You step through the sliding glass doors of Suvarnabhumi Airport into the Bangkok night and you breathe it in. Exhaust and jasmine and something faintly sweet and rotten beneath both. The specific smell of a city that never fully sleeps and never fully wakes. Your carry-on bag pulls at your shoulder. You have a guidebook in the outer pocket that you will never once open. The taxi takes 40 minutes through elevated highway traffic, the city spreading out below in a grid of neon and concrete, and the occasional gold spire of a temple catching the light from somewhere. You press your forehead against the cool glass and watch it pass. You are 52 years old, recently divorced, and you have told everyone who asks that this trip is a reset. A bit of sun, a bit of distance, a chance to remember who you are outside the context of a marriage that ended not with a fight, but with two people sitting at a kitchen table in December, looking at each other, and realizing with quiet mutual horror that neither of them had anything left to say. Your hotel is on Sukhumvit Soi 11, a mid-range place with a lobby that smells of air freshener and mildew fighting to a draw. The breakfast room is open from 6:30. In the mornings, you will watch other men eating alone at separate tables, all of them staring at their phones with the same hollow focus, and you will tell yourself you are not like them. You are here for something different. You haven't decided yet what that is. A colleague from work, a man named Rob who has done this trip 3 times, told you before you left that you should see Nana Plaza. Just to see it, he said. A cultural thing. You should know it exists. You go on your first night because you are jet-lagged and restless and the hotel corridor feels like it's narrowing. Nana Plaza is 3 floors of open-air bars built around a courtyard off Sukhumvit. And the first thing you understand when you walk through the gate is that every sensory system you have fires at once. Pink neon and blue neon bleeding into each other on wet pavement from an earlier rain. The bass lines of 4 different sound systems colliding in the courtyard air into something that isn't music, but isn't not music either. Women in matching outfits leaning over railings on the upper floors, calling down to men moving below. The whole structure hums with a commerce so undisguised it loops back around to something almost honest. You are aware, with the clinical part of your brain that never entirely shuts off, that you are being evaluated, that this is a market and you are the commodity being targeted, not the one doing the targeting. The awareness doesn't make you leave. You find a quieter bar on the 2nd floor, set back from the railing, less performance, and more waiting room. You order a Chang beer in a brown bottle and sit on a stool and watch the courtyard below through a film of condensation on the railing. That's when you see her. She isn't performing for anyone. She's sitting 2 stools away with her phone in her hands, scrolling through something, and she laughs at it. A real laugh, private and sudden, the kind that happens before the social filter engages. She's wearing a small gold Buddha amulet on a thin chain at her collarbone, the kind sold at every temple market in the city for 100 baht, and her hair is pulled back loosely, and she looks, in this moment, like someone killing time rather than someone working. When she notices you watching her, she doesn't switch anything on. She just looks at you with mild level curiosity and says, in English with a slight upward inflection, "You look lost." Her name is Nok. She is direct without being aggressive, warm without being performed, and she speaks enough English to have a real conversation and enough silence to let you fill in the gaps with whatever you need to fill them with. You talk for 2 hours. She asks about your work. You're a project engineer. You explain the basics. She listens without pretending to understand the details, which is somehow more respectful than pretending. You mention your divorce once, and she doesn't push it. You mention your adult child, and she asks the name and files it away and uses it correctly later, which costs her nothing and buys her everything. Before you leave, the barman explains the bar fine. 500 baht, approximately $14 for her time after closing. The number is so small, it feels almost accidental, like a rounding error on a restaurant bill. You pay it without thinking twice. Walking back to the hotel, warm air on your face, city noise around you, you feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Not desire exactly, though there's that too. Something more primary. You feel like your presence in the world has registered on someone's radar. You feel, in the bluntest possible terms, like you matter to someone who didn't have to pretend. You go back the next night, and the night after. By the fourth night, you stop constructing reasons. Knock is different on each visit, not in a suspicious way, but in the way a real person is different depending on their mood and what the day has been. Sometimes she is funny in a dry, offhand way that catches you off guard. Sometimes she is quieter, and you sit together with drinks and watch the courtyard, and the quiet is comfortable rather than strained. On the fifth night, she tells you, without drama or tears, that she doesn't like this work. She says it the way you might say you don't like your commute, as a fact about your life, not a bid for sympathy. She says she came from Udon Thani in the northeast, in the Isan region, because her mother's health bills couldn't be covered any other way. She has a younger brother still in school. She wants eventually to open a small restaurant back in her village. Something simple. You believe her. More than that, you need to believe her, and in that moment the two feel identical. You have a return flight in 4 days. You extend the trip by 10 days and arrange for Knock's bar fine to be paid daily so she doesn't have to work evenings. 35,000 baht for 10 days. A little under $1,000, you tell yourself this is a bridge arrangement, temporary scaffolding, while something real takes shape. Her phone has a cracked screen, and you buy her a new one from a shop on Sukhumvit because it costs 4,000 baht. And the cracked screen bothers you more than it bothers her. She cries a little when you hand it over, and you feel the specific pride of a man who has solved a problem that mattered to someone. The flight home is not a return. It is a countdown. 3 months later, you are back at your desk. The engineering work is the same. The apartment has beige walls and IKEA furniture and a photograph of your child at graduation and a kind of silence that has texture to it. The silence of a life that is organized and functional and empty in the way a clean aquarium is empty. What has changed is your phone. You and Knock speak online every day, sometimes twice. She sends voice messages in Thai-inflected English that you replay more often than is rational. She calls you Tirak, darling, and the first time she says it, you Google the word to make sure you heard correctly, and then you sit with your phone in your hands feeling like someone who has just been handed something fragile and valuable and is not sure he deserves to hold it. The money begins quietly. It always begins quietly. Her mother needs a hospital visit. 8,000 baht, roughly $230. Her brother's school registration fee comes due, 6,000 baht. A motorbike needs repair so she can get to a new job she says she's found, a waitressing position away from the bar, 4,500 baht. Each amount is individually small, each emergency is individually plausible, and you send every transfer through Western Union with the particular satisfaction of a man who can solve problems from 10,000 kilometers away. At the end of the first month, you add it up, and the total is just over $600. You don't feel the hit. You feel useful. You find the expat forums. This is a genre of internet community that exists in a specific tonal register. Men at various stages of the same story, distributing advice with the authority of people who have already made the mistakes they're warning others about. There are threads with titles that should function as alarms. Threads about patterns, about financial strategies employed by bar workers, about a concept called the girlfriend experience, which is described as professional warmth so accomplished it is structurally indistinguishable from the real thing. You read these threads with genuine attention and zero behavioral change. You decide the men posting warnings are bitter, or unlucky, or failed to find what you found. You decide Knock is different. You know this because she told you so, and because the alternative is a reorganization of reality you are not prepared to perform. 6 months after your first trip, you fly back. This time, Knock meets you at arrivals with her younger cousin, who takes a photograph of the two of you in the airport. You slightly dazed from the flight, Knock laughing, leaning into your shoulder. She posts it to her Facebook page, and something in you settles, a tension you hadn't named until it released. You feel publicly claimed. You feel real in someone's life, not just in your own head. She takes you to her village outside Udanthani. You drive northeast from the city through flat land and rice paddies, and the occasional roadside shrine with offerings of garlands and Fanta, and you sit in the passenger seat watching it all pass and feeling, with a sincerity that embarrasses you slightly, that you are seeing the actual country rather than the surface of it. The family home is wooden and open-sided, raised on short stilts with a corrugated roof and a satellite dish and a worn wooden floor that's cool and smooth underfoot. Her mother is a small woman with kind eyes who weighs you deeply when you arrive, pressing her palms together and bowing her head with a formality that makes you feel you've been given something ceremonial. You sit cross-legged on the floor and eat some tom, green papaya shredded fine and dressed with lime and fish sauce and chilies, bright and sour and alive, and sticky rice pulled from a woven basket, and you eat too much because you want to seem like someone comfortable here, someone who belongs. You give the mother an envelope with 20,000 baht inside because Nook mentioned the medical bills and because you want this family to register you as someone worth keeping. The mother opens it, and the crying is immediate and real, and you feel like a good man in a way you haven't in years. There is a relatively new pickup truck in the yard. When you ask about it, Nock says it belongs to her uncle. You file this under things you don't need to understand. On the third day, she takes you to a piece of land on the edge of the village, a flat plot with a view of rice paddies and a line of palm trees at the far end, and she holds your hand and tells you it has been in the family for years, but they may lose it. There is a debt, a title complication, something bureaucratic and opaque that she explains in general terms without enough specifics for you to push back on. She doesn't ask you for anything. She just holds your hand and says she wishes things were different, her voice quiet and flat in a way that doesn't reach for your sympathy, but gets it anyway. You ask the question yourself. She seems almost reluctant to answer. 350,000 baht. $10,000 approximately. She says it like the number is too large to expect anything from you, and that restraint is the thing that makes you want to give it. You don't say yes in the field. You think about it on the flight home. By the time the wheels touch down, you have already decided, and 3 days later, you wire the full amount. A week after that, Nock sends a video of herself and her mother standing on the land in the afternoon light, both of them crying and waving at the camera. You watch it 14 times over 2 days. In the video, the land behind them is flat and ordinary, and the light on it is warm and golden, and you understand, watching it, that you have purchased something that feels like meaning. And you decide this is close enough to the real thing. 10 months after that first night at Sugar Bar, you fly back to Bangkok for the third time. Nook meets you at the airport again. She is wearing a yellow dress and she looks happy to see you, and the happiness looks real, and you have stopped asking yourself whether it is because the question feels like vandalism. Over dinner at a riverside restaurant where the chow freya is black and slow beneath fairy lights strung along the railing, you propose. You bought the ring on Silam Road from a jewelry shop in a glass-fronted building, 45,000 baht for a gold band, because she mentioned once that she prefers gold over diamonds. She says yes. She cries. A couple at the next table hears it and applauds, and the applause feels like the universe ratifying something. You feel for the first time in years like the protagonist of your own story. You take early retirement from the engineering firm, or more accurately, you negotiate a part-time remote consulting arrangement, enough to generate some income while you execute the life you've decided on. You rent a condo in Thonglor, one of Bangkok's better neighborhoods, 35,000 baht a month for a place on the 14th floor, with white tile floors and floor-to-ceiling windows, and a rooftop pool and a 7-Eleven on the ground floor that you will visit so often the staff learn your usual order. Nock moves in. You are, by every external marker, living the plan. The first months are genuinely good in the way that new constructions are good, everything is fresh, there is daily novelty. The logistics of building a shared life provide enough forward momentum to substitute for depth. You learn to order grilled pork from the market woman on the corner, using enough Thai to make her laugh. You learn to negotiate tuk-tuk fares without getting taken. Nock cooks on Saturday mornings, pad krapao with a fried egg on top, and the smell of basil and fish sauce fills the apartment and becomes the smell of your life here, the specific sensory flag your brain plants for this chapter. You think, on more than one occasion, that you have pulled off something most men would not have attempted. Her phone is the first thing. Not that she hides it. It's more granular than that, a consistent angling away when a message arrives, a slight tension in her shoulders when she steps onto the balcony to take a call in Thai, too rapid for you to follow. Each time you ask, the answer is immediate and plausible. Her mother, her cousin, a friend from Udon Thani. You believe each individual answer. The pattern you decline to look at directly, the way you might decline to look at a crack in a structural wall you've already moved into. A man named Gary changes this. He's been in Bangkok 8 years, a British man who found his way here through circumstances he describes without self-pity. And he has the particular quality of someone who has processed his own version of this story so completely that he can discuss it without emotion. He takes you for a beer at a place on Thonglor that has wooden stools and a fan overhead that needs oiling, and tells you, with a directness that leaves no room for misinterpretation, that Knock was seen 2 weeks ago at a different bar. Not sugar. Not working. Just drinking, with a group that included a Thai man who was not a relative. You thank Gary. You go home. You do not mention it to Knock. You tell yourself it means nothing, and you tell yourself this with such completeness that for several weeks you almost believe it. The Sin-Sod negotiation happens through Knock as intermediary, since her family speaks no English. They ask for 300,000 baht. You settle after a negotiation you're told is respectful and appropriate on 250,000. You pay it without flinching. The Buddhist ceremony is held at a temple near her village. You wear a traditional suit hired from a shop in Udon Thani, cream-colored cotton, slightly too short in the arms, and you stand under a white canopy while a monk in saffron recites blessings and binds your wrists together with white cord, and 50 people from the village watch and eat and drink. And you smile in every photograph, with the uncomplicated joy of a man who believes he has arrived somewhere. In the yard, alongside the first pickup truck, there is now a second one. 30 days after the ceremony, Knock tells you she wants to visit her mother for a week. You say, of course. The week becomes 10 days. The line messages grow shorter, more perfunctory. When you video call, she looks at you from a slight distance, as if through glass, as if she is already in the process of renegotiating something. You note each of these things and reclassify them as work stress, family difficulty, the normal friction of a marriage finding its rhythm. Then, Gary sends a screenshot without comment. It's a Facebook post, public, shared by someone in Knock's network from a nightclub in Udon Thani. The timestamp says 1:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Knock is in the foreground laughing, her head thrown back. In the background, Gary has circled something. A Thai man's arm around her shoulder, the hand visible at her waist. You look at it for a long time. Then you do the thing you've been systematically not doing for 18 months. You look properly, not at single data points but at the full pattern. Through methods you're not proud of, a shared password for a streaming service that gives you access to a linked account, a mutual Facebook contact who doesn't realize the connection, you find a thread of communication with a man in Udon Thani that runs back 2 years, predating the engagement, predating the land payment, predating possibly the proposal. The messages are in Thai, and you translate them with Google, which is imperfect in the small meanings, but adequate for the large ones. The terms of endearment are the same ones she uses with you. The word Tirek appears in the thread 47 times. You count. You call a Thai family lawyer, recommended by an expat legal directory, at $300 an hour billed internationally. He is professional and not unkind. He explains that the land transfer was entirely legal and is in Knock's name. The Sin-Sod was a gift, not a loan, and carries no legal claim. As for the marriage itself, conducted under Buddhist ceremony without civil registration, which he notes carefully, is common and carries different implications for property and spousal rights than a formally registered civil marriage. Your legal position is limited. He suggests, very gently, that pursuing anything through Thai courts would cost more than it could recover. He thanks you for calling and wishes you well. You sit in the Thonglor condo in the dark for a long time after hanging up. The floor-to-ceiling windows show the Bangkok skyline, orange and white and flickering, and somewhere below on the street a motorbike horn sounds and fades, and the city continues its business entirely indifferent to what has just happened in this apartment on the 14th floor. You take the bus to Udon Thani, 7 hours north, seats with thin padding, a bag of fried chicken from a highway stop that you don't eat. You arrive at the family home unannounced at mid-afternoon, the sun flat and white overhead, the air smelling of dust and wood smoke. Knock is there. When she hears you on the steps, she comes to the door and sees your face, and something shifts in hers. Not guilt exactly, not panic, something more tired than either. The confrontation is not loud. You have always solved problems with correct inputs and controlled outputs, and you're not going to stop now. You sit at the kitchen table and you place your phone between you with the translated screenshots visible. The ceiling fan turns overhead with a dry clicking rhythm. Knock looks at the phone for a moment and then looks away and then looks back at you. She doesn't deny it. She is quiet for long enough that the quiet becomes its own kind of confirmation. Then she speaks. Not to perform remorse, she doesn't perform anything now, but to explain in the flat, factual tone of someone who is done managing someone else's version of events. She tells you she cared for you. She tells you the fear of losing the security was real. She tells you the man in Udon Thani predates you by years, that she couldn't simply excise it, that she thought your worlds were separate enough that it wouldn't intersect. She says this without cruelty and without asking you to forgive it. Then she says the thing that will stay with you. She says, I gave you what you came for. You wanted to feel chosen. I gave you that. Was it not real just because I also survived? You don't have an answer. The ceiling fan clicks. Through the window, the second pickup truck sits in the afternoon light. You learn one more thing in that kitchen, and it arrives quietly. Nok has a daughter, 7 years old, living with the grandmother in this house. You didn't know because Nok was afraid you'd look at her differently, afraid it would change the story you needed to believe. The girl's father is the man from the Facebook photo, a mechanic in Udon Thani who cannot support them financially and whom Nok cannot simply stop loving because love and economics don't operate on the same logic. The land you paid for is, in Nok's understanding of the future, her daughter's inheritance. The girl's name is Ploy. You came to Thailand because you wanted to feel like your presence in the world registered on someone who had options. And it did. You registered as the solution to a set of material problems that a woman in Isan with limited options and a daughter to protect and a mother in medical debt had identified and pursued with considerable intelligence and considerable, terrible care. The care was real. The warmth was not manufactured from nothing. But the story you were living in and the story she was living in were never the same story. You were the last person in your shared narrative to understand this. You returned to Bangkok alone. Nok follows 2 days later because the lease is in your name and she needs time to arrange the next phase of her life, and the 4 days you spend in the same apartment moving around each other with careful, exhausted courtesy are in some ways the most honest time you have spent together. Without the architecture of the performance, without the maintenance of your belief, something simpler is visible. She is a person. She is resourceful and practical and capable of genuine warmth, and she navigated a world that offered her almost nothing using the tools that world made available. The bar economy she worked in existed before she arrived in it and will exist after she leaves. The foreign men who move through it carry their own architectures, their own needs, their own willingness to fund a fantasy because the fantasy is cheaper, in the short term, than the work of being truly known. She tells you in one of these final quiet evenings how it worked from the inside, not as a confession, as information shared now that the price of honesty has dropped to zero. She describes the bar system with the unsentimental clarity of someone describing a job. The mama-san's percentage, the informal rules about which men are safe and which aren't, the way girls share intelligence about customers, the collective management of expectation. She says it is not different from other kinds of service work, except that the product being sold is the feeling of being loved, which is the most expensive thing in the world when you need it and the cheapest to produce when you don't. She says she knew within 2 weeks of meeting you that you were a good man. She says good men are the most dangerous customers because they build things, futures, stories, a whole architecture of meaning that the situation was never designed to support. You don't argue with this. You have run out of positions to defend. You tally the numbers on your last night in the condo, not as punishment, but because you have always been the kind of man who closes his accounts. Land payment, $10,000. Sinsod, $7,100. 18 months of condo rent, $19,000. The ring, the phones, the transfers, the mother's envelope, $9,000 and change. Flights, the visa extensions, the daily expenses of living in Bangkok at Farang prices. The total comes to something above $50,000. The number is real and large, and it represents something more precise than money lost. It represents the specific price of needing to be chosen so badly that you funded the choosing yourself. On your last morning, you pack the carry-on bag. The condo is cleaned by Nok the night before, with a thoroughness that felt like apology, though she didn't call it that. The jasmine soap she uses a smell that will ambush you for years in places you don't expect. A hotel lobby, a woman walking past you on a street in a completely different city, a soap aisle in a pharmacy at 9 on a Tuesday morning. Suvarnabhumi Airport again. Economy class, Air Asia, a budget carrier, because business class belongs to a financial reality that no longer applies. You sit at gate B7 with a coffee from the Doi Chang kiosk. Thai Arabica, slightly bitter, good. And you don't open your phone for 40 minutes. You think about Ploy, 7 years old, growing up in a wooden house outside Udon Thani with a satellite dish on the roof and land that is hers because a foreign man who never met her fell in love with a story that included her without knowing it. Somewhere in the moral arithmetic of what happened, you think, that has to count for something. You're not certain what. Knock sends a final line message as your gate opens for boarding. It says, "Take care of yourself. You are a good man." You read it twice, and then you put your phone in your pocket and pick up your bag and walk to the gate. 6 months later, in your beige apartment in a mid-sized western city where it snows 5 months of the year, you receive a message through a mutual expat contact. Knock has met someone. A Dutch man, recently widowed, a retired school teacher. He has posted on a Thai expat forum that he feels, for the first time in years, truly chosen. Someone in the comments has replied with a warning, one of those detailed patient been-there warnings that men like Gary specialize in. The school teacher has responded that those men are bitter, or unlucky, or simply didn't find what he found. You think about writing to him for 3 days, you draft the message twice. In the end, you don't send it, and not because you don't care. You don't send it because you understand now with the particular clarity of someone who has already paid for the understanding that the warning is undeliverable. He isn't reading for information. He is reading for permission to hope you were the same. You would have done exactly the same. On your phone, in your camera roll, between a photograph of your child's graduation and a screenshot of a flight deal to Lisbon, there is still a video of a woman and her mother standing on a flat piece of land in northeastern Thailand, waving at the camera, crying in the warm afternoon light. You haven't deleted it. You haven't watched it. It sits there, a 14-second video that costs $50,000 and one story about yourself that you needed to believe, which you cannot calculate the price of, and don't try. Outside it is snowing, the apartment hums with heating. You close your phone and set it face down on the table and sit in the quiet, and the quiet has a different texture now than it did before you left. Less like emptiness, more like something you've earned the right to sit with. Thousands of men make this journey every year. Some find something real, most find a mirror, and they spend everything they have looking into it, calling the reflection love. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.